The deaths in Danganronpa, we all hate to see them. Well, almost all of them. When it comes to a character's death in Danganronpa, a lot of characters' arc just stops there within the story, which I could give many examples of this, but you already know whom I'm talking about. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about two characters in which their impact mattered a lot after their death, which are Chihiro Fujisaki and Chiaki Nanami. Yes, there are characters that have a lot of impact after death, however, in this case of these two, it's a very different story. It's not about their death that gave them the impact, but rather they stayed alive through means that aren't really possible. And because of this, their importance gave them a lot more meaning to the story, which in turn I'm not really surprised that these two are some of the most popular characters in the series. Oh, and before I start, expect spoilers for the first two games and the anime. So first off, we're going to be talking about Chihiro Fujisaki. This cute little nerd is the super high school level programmer who is described that due to bullying, started to dress up like a girl, so that way people wouldn't bully them. Okay, first thing I gotta say about that, girls still get bullied. I mean, just look at Toko.
Want some tea? Give me my tea, bitch! Damn! That shit good!
Second off, I'm not going to be talking about them cross-dressing, mainly because it's a sensitive and controversial topic. I'd much rather not get into that when it's not really the topic of this video. However, Chihiro expresses a lot of amazing talent in the first game, becoming a focus point within the story of the students trying to escape Monokuma's game. Even appearing in the second game near the end of the story, where it's revealed that they're one of the main programmers behind the Neo World program. Chihiro, unfortunately, dies in chapter 2 after the person they looked up to had murdered them. Mondo explained his side of the story, and the rest of the game just continued on from there. However, you see that Chihiro left a very important thing behind for the students to look after. One of these things being alter ego, being one of the main things that Chihiro is known for. Creating an AI system that passes over even after death is pretty huge. Even the AI was saying that they were prepared to take over just in case Chihiro actually died, which they did. And for a young teenager, the impressive terms of skill and potential here is, well, it's massive. I mean, there's no real else way to describe it. Alter Ego becomes a very important tool in order to help the remaining classmates escape, which, weirdly enough, it's described that Alter Ego can feel things? What? How is that even possible? In other ways, it even saved the classmate's life. Just like how he did with Makoto during his execution. But for some reason, didn't save Kyoko's? This I completely don't understand, because it just doesn't make any sense. I understand that Chihiro was a lot closer to Makoto than Kirigiri, however, Chihiro is described as a very sweet and caring person. Why wouldn't they save anybody? If it was anybody's execution, I'm sure they would have saved them. Their arc was pretty amazing, to be honest. To me, it felt like it was split into two different parts. The first part being when they were alive, wanting them to overcome their biggest fear and get stronger, which made them look up to Mondo. It helped them focus a lot on their struggles and even managed to get more confident in themselves. And then right after, you look at Alter Ego. When they were Alter Ego, they were able to stop focusing on themselves and help the people around them, help their friends, which is described in their free time events. And they even explained that before they were too busy to create Alter Ego sooner, mainly because they were trying to focus on themselves. That's how I would like to perceive Chihiro's arc. I'm not sure about anybody else. I feel like this is a really good balance between becoming more self-confident as a person while trying to focus and help other people. And in addition, we get to see in their free time events just how kind of a person Chihiro really is. Their first free time event included them being bitten by a mosquito, and they just did nothing about it. They were stating that mosquitoes are living things too, though. It might have its own mosquito family. This was in reply to Makoto just brushing it off as a mosquito and nothing more. In their second free time event, they talk about not being able to help at all, and stating that their skills will be able to come in handy when it comes to computers, mentioning that they're working on something that stimulates human thoughts and sounds like something you may know. Chihiro may have died early within their arc, but between themselves and Alter Ego made for a pretty amazing summary on their character, to be honest. With their skill being one of the most useful skills in the series, it's good to see that their character lived on in the mind of the player, even after death. And now we have Chiaki, which It is a very interesting situation, to say the least.
Ah, a nasty, trashy pig shit.
Now onto Chiaki Nanami, the super high school level gamer. This shortcake is... Oh wait, she isn't a shortcake. She's Chiaki. She plays a very important role in Danganronpa 2, being a guide for the player in many of the investigations and trials. Her talent isn't very important, but her whole existence within the second game is a huge reveal, showing at the end of the game that everything was just a simulation and that Chiaki was just an NPC. But then the anime just says,
Not really. I'm really into this pizza though.
and shows that Chiaki was indeed a real person outside of the simulation. Now, this situation's a bit more tricky than Chihiro, mainly because the anime kind of sets up Chiaki as this godsend of the group for some reason, which in my opinion I feel like it wasn't needed at all. However, because of this, it sets up for the 77-beat class to be brainwashed and leads them to becoming the remnants of despair later on. In the game, she was revealed to be the traitor among the group, which wasn't really pushed as much as the first game. I would constantly see people who would play the game mention that they completely forgot the existence of the traitor till later on. Just like Chihiro, she is one of the most caring and soft characters in the series by expressing her love that she has for her friends. With one of the main driving points that she gives to Hajime at the end of the game is that you should focus on your own decisions, which in this case was creating their own future rather than picking hope or despair. This also happened in the anime where she would talk about that talents shouldn't really matter and that the person themselves should be the most important thing to them, which Hajime doesn't really pick up until it's too late within the story. Unlike Chihiro, the way Chiaki was impactful after death was rather by Hajime's side than the whole group. Yes, the whole group was worried and freaked out during Chiaki's traitor outcome, but she really only stayed in Hajime's mind when it came to her ideals or what she thought about the situation. This, with the addition of her being a guide for the investigation, in my opinion leads to her being way more popular than the rest of the cast. In my opinion, she already had a good, interesting arc to her story within the game, but the anime just kinda improved upon this, which can't be said for the other characters in there. However, her death was a lot more painful and hard to watch in the anime compared to the game, as it felt like it was just going on forever, almost taunting the player, with it seeming like it's never gonna end. But unlike in the simulation, it's shown at the end of Hope arc that the whole Danganronpa 2 cast survived. Except for Chiaki.
Hey, there's some bullshit.
Which to me feels really odd. I don't know, hear me out. I love these characters, and I'm glad they're alive, but the ending of the second game really makes the player believe that they won't wake up, they're not gonna make it. We see fake outs like this happen all the time in the anime, which is a bit cheap, but I guess that's just me. Anyways, we see her holding Monami, talking to Hajime at the end of the Hope arc, realizing that he should have listened to her at the start. And even if she isn't alive anymore, he's gonna hold on to these words, just like a guidance from the game. In addition, during her free time events, we don't really see much of her nice side as we do with Chihiro's free time events. But within these, we see that she doesn't really know many common things and often sleeps way too much from playing her games. She even questions where milk comes from. These free time events show the player more about her quirky and antisocial behavior towards other people, rather than her talking about talents being pointless like she does in the main story. And from this creates a healthy balance between, which in my opinion can't be said for a lot of characters, since they either die way too early for their character development to actually finish, or just don't get as much from the main story as others. When seeing these two characters together, it really shows how similar they are and how much impact the player's experience they got by overriding the rules of death, which is very prevalent in the Danganronpa series. I mean, they even share the same birthday, which to me shows that they knew what they were doing. Something to bring up as well within the fandom, I see a lot of despair-ease describe these two characters as basic or boring, which I can maybe understand, as I've seen people complain that Chiaki felt pushed onto the player to be like a Kirigiri of the second game. However, I don't really think this is a good comparison. I mean, yeah, she's a guidance, but she doesn't really share much traits or arc with Kirigiri at all. One thing I can maybe see is that she is pushed on way more in the anime than the game, and she's seen as this gamer Jesus, but I feel like this was perfectly well put together in the game. I don't really see people complain about Chihiro a lot, but it's mostly with Chiaki. Danganronpa is able to bring a lot to the table in terms of how they handle their characters' deaths, which have gone over two very good examples of this. Yes, I could have gone into way more detail about both characters, but that would feel more like a character analysis video rather than their impact after death. I definitely want to do character analysis videos in the future, focus on a certain character and what they brought to the series. It could be very fun, and I have a couple ideas on my own. And I'm starting that right now. Please welcome my next video on the Monotaro analysis video. He likes to throw stars.